How to Talk in English, a Journey of Confidence and Mastery. It was a sunny afternoon when Aryan first realized he needed to speak English fluently. He had always struggled with the language, avoiding conversations in English at all costs. But the opportunity of a lifetime was just around the corner. A job interview at a top multinational company. The catch: the interview would be conducted entirely in English. Aryan sat down with a cup of tea, staring at the job description. Fluency in English, both written and spoken. The words seemed to leap off the screen. His heart raced. He had the technical skills required, but his hesitation in speaking English always held him back. He needed to overcome this challenge, and fast. That evening, Aryan visited his best friend, Raya, who was fluent in English. Ria had always encouraged him to practice speaking, but Aryan was too shy. "You know," she said, handing him a notebook, "the key to speaking English fluently is confidence. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to start talking." Aryan sighed. "But how do I get started? Every time I try, I freeze up." Raya smiled. "We'll start small. Just a few sentences a day. Don't worry about mistakes. The more you practice, the easier it will become." The next morning, Aryan decided to put Ria's advice into action. He stood in front of the mirror, practicing basic sentences. "Hello, my name is Aryan. I am a software engineer." It felt awkward at first, but as the words rolled off his tongue, he began to feel a small surge of confidence. His first real test came that afternoon when he received a call from a potential client. Normally, he would switch to Hindi immediately, but this time he forced himself to respond in English. "Hello, how can I help you?" he said, his voice a little shaky but clear. The conversation wasn't perfect, but he made it through. Aryan's small victory fueled his motivation. He downloaded language learning apps and started watching English movies with subtitles. He noticed that immersing himself in the language, even in small doses, was helping him get used to its rhythm and flow. Ria suggested they start speaking only in English whenever they met. At first, Aryan felt uncomfortable, stumbling over words and hesitating before forming sentences. But Ria was patient, correcting him gently and encouraging him to keep going. One day, Aryan's company held a meeting with a foreign client. This was his chance to prove to himself that he could handle professional conversations in English. He spent hours the night before preparing for the meeting, going over technical terms and practicing his speech. As he walked into the meeting room, Aryan felt a knot in his stomach. But then he remembered Ria's words. It's not about being perfect. It's about being confident. With a deep breath, he greeted the client in English, shaking his hand with a smile. The meeting began, and Aryan started explaining the project in English. At first, he stumbled over a few words, but he quickly regained his footing. He realized that the client wasn't expecting perfection, just clarity and professionalism. His confidence grew as the meeting progressed. After the meeting, Aryan felt a wave of relief and accomplishment. He had done it. He had held an entire conversation in English without switching to Hindi. The client was impressed, and his boss congratulated him on his performance. Encouraged by his success, Aryan decided to join an English-speaking group online. Every evening, he would log in and engage in conversations with people from different countries. The exposure to various accents and styles of speech helped him become more adaptable. It wasn't just about speaking anymore. Aryan began to notice improvements in his listening skills too. He could understand English news channels better, and even when people spoke quickly, he found himself catching more of what was being said. One day, Aryan decided to give a presentation at work, entirely in English. It was a bold move, but he felt ready for the challenge. He spent days preparing his slides and rehearsing in front of the mirror. The more he practiced, the more fluent and confident he felt. The day of the presentation arrived, and Aryan stood in front of his colleagues, ready to speak. As he began, his nerves quickly disappeared. The words flowed smoothly, and he could see his colleagues nodding and understanding. He was no longer afraid of making mistakes. After the presentation, Aryan's boss approached him with a smile. "You have come a long way, Aryan. Your English has improved so much, and it's clear you've worked hard. Keep it up." Those words meant the world to him. The next challenge Aryan faced was participating in social conversations in English. He was comfortable in formal settings, but casual chit-chat still made him nervous. Ria invited him to a gathering with some friends, where the conversation would be entirely in English. At the gathering, Aryan felt a familiar twinge of anxiety, but as the conversations started flowing, he realized something important. Nobody was scrutinizing his every word. People were focused on the conversation, not on whether his grammar was perfect. As the evening progressed, Aryan found himself laughing and engaging in light-hearted banter with ease. He didn't overthink every sentence, and for the first time, he felt natural speaking English in a social setting. It was a turning point for him. Aryan's journey continued as he started exploring English literature. He picked up books that had always intimidated him, starting with simple novels and gradually moving on to more complex ones. Reading not only expanded his vocabulary, but also helped him understand sentence structures better. In the following weeks, Aryan took on yet another challenge: writing in English. He began journaling daily, reflecting on his experiences and thoughts. Writing helped him organize his thoughts in the language and gave him a deeper understanding of grammar and expression. One afternoon, Aryan's manager assigned him to a cross-cultural project that required frequent communication with an overseas team. He knew this was the perfect opportunity to put everything he had learned into practice. The thought of leading international meetings didn't scare him anymore. The project kicked off, and Aryan found himself handling emails, phone calls, and virtual meetings with ease. He noticed how his confidence had transformed, and even when he made small mistakes, he didn't let them derail his focus. Despite his progress, Aryan still faced moments of doubt. There were days when he would stumble over words or feel overwhelmed by a fast-paced conversation. But instead of retreating, he reminded himself that learning a language is a continuous process. Raya continued to be his biggest supporter, and one day she suggested they record themselves speaking in English. Listening to the recordings helped Aryan identify areas for improvement, but it also allowed him to appreciate how far he had come. As time went on, Aryan realized that his fear of speaking English had been his biggest obstacle. Once he let go of the need to be perfect, he began enjoying the process. English was no longer just a requirement for his career. It became a tool for connecting with people and exploring new ideas. Aryan's family noticed the changes in him too. He started helping his younger cousins with their English homework, offering them the same advice Ria had given him. Start small, practice daily, and don't worry about mistakes. One evening, Aryan received an email from the multinational company where he had applied months ago. They wanted to schedule a second interview. This time, Aryan felt ready. He knew that even if he wasn't perfect, he had the skills and confidence to communicate effectively. The night before the interview, Aryan reflected on his journey. From practicing in front of the mirror to leading international meetings, he had transformed not just his language skills, but his entire mindset. He was no longer afraid of speaking English. The interview day arrived, and Aryan logged into the virtual meeting room. The interviewer greeted him in English, and without hesitation, Aryan responded confidently. The conversation flowed smoothly, and Aryan felt proud of how far he had come. After the interview, Aryan received positive feedback. Although the job was competitive, the interviewer was impressed by his communication skills and professionalism. Even if he didn't get the job, Aryan knew he had given it his best. Weeks passed, and Aryan continued to improve his English. He began attending workshops, engaging in public speaking events, and even mentoring others who were struggling with the language. His journey had come full circle. One day, Aryan received an unexpected email. He had been offered the position at the multinational company. The news was a testament to his perseverance and growth. He called Ria immediately to share the good news. Ria congratulated him, proud of his achievements. "You see," she said with a smile, "I told you it was all about confidence. You've always had the ability. You just needed to believe in yourself." Aryan chuckled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her support throughout his journey. "You're right," he replied. "It wasn't just about learning a language. It was about trusting myself to keep going, even when I made mistakes." As Aryan began his new role at the multinational company, he quickly realized just how far he had come. His English wasn't just a tool to get the job anymore. It had become an integral part of his everyday life. Whether he was leading international meetings, collaborating with colleagues from different countries, or simply chatting with friends over coffee, English had become a bridge to new experiences and opportunities. One day, Aryan was invited to speak at a conference on cross-cultural communication. The idea of public speaking had once terrified him, but now it excited him. Standing on stage in front of an audience from all over the world, he spoke confidently about his journey, how learning to speak English had opened doors not just professionally, but personally as well. The applause that followed his speech wasn't just for his words, but for the determination and growth he had shown over the months. It was a full circle moment, a reminder that the fear he once had was now a distant memory. After the conference, Aryan was approached by several attendees who shared their own struggles with learning English. He listened empathetically, offering advice and encouragement just as Ria had done for him. He realized that his journey had the power to inspire others, and that felt even more fulfilling than the professional success he had achieved. As Aryan looked back on his journey, he knew that speaking English wasn't just about mastering a language. It was about finding the courage to step outside his comfort zone, embracing the process of learning, and discovering his own potential along the way. And so, with every new conversation, every meeting, and every challenge that came his way, Aryan continued to grow, not just as a speaker of English, but as someone who had learned the most valuable lesson of all. That confidence, persistence, and a willingness to make mistakes are the true keys to mastering any skill. And just like that, what had started as a simple goal to speak English had turned into a lifelong journey of self-improvement, exploration, and endless possibilities.